Welcome to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. I'm your host, renowned sex and relationship coach Amanda Testa. And if you are looking to reclaim your sexual desire, take sex from a to-do to something you look forward to, and enjoy deeply connected relationships without adding more to your already full plate, then you are in the right place. Listen in to discover how to fan the flames of your feminine fire, fall in love with your sensual self again, and experience intimacy like never before, all in a way that feels really good to your system. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to our podcast today. If you are a high-achieving woman working in corporate, if you are just a busy mom or an entrepreneur, and you feel like you've been hustling hard, but still feel drained, then you are in the right place. Because today I am going to be talking with one amazing woman, Allie Kuhland, and we're going to be talking about how using your human design can actually be a great tool around decision-making authority, making more money, trusting yourself, and even navigating relationships and more. And my guest, Allie, she's a certified life coach. She's a human design expert in a sales powerhouse who has earned multiple six-figure incomes in the fast-paced SAS world. SAS, did I say it? Allie SAS. I'm so non-tech. While also conquering extreme endurance challenges like summiting some of the highest peaks and doing 100-mile races. She's a badass. But what makes her truly extraordinary is that she figured out how to do all this while feeling better, tripling her income, improving her relationships, and making life feel easy and fun. I'm Amanda Testa, the host of the podcast, and I am so excited to talk about this today because I know many of you out there are looking for ways to step into your power more, trust your energy, and create wealth and success in ways that feel good. So, Allie, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, and lovely intro. And a lot of that I would say you have helped me do. So I just want to give you a little bit of credit there where it's deserved because a lot of that work was figuring out how to really connect with myself in a different way that led me to exploring a lot of these things. So it's been a very magic experience.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, we had the pleasure of working together a few years ago, and it's amazing to see just how you continue to expand and blossom. And I'm curious for you too, because I know maybe there are people out there that might not know what human design is. I know many people are maybe familiar with it, but just if you would just give a quick overview of just what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Very common to have some questions around that. I think it's becoming a little more popular, which I love. The way I like to describe it is it's an astrology based system. There is a lot of different components that come into play. There's some things with chakras and energy systems and all sorts of different ideas and ways that we read who we are and how our bodies work. And it's really just combined into this one like body graph that shows you the science of you. And I just think it's been a fascinating tool that I uncovered a few years ago, really while exploring my personal energy and the way that I worked best. And I just realized it doesn't work the same for everyone. And we're all trying, I think, especially women in this world right now, to do it all. And we're just not meant to do it all. We don't have to do it all. And we can quite frankly do a lot less, be a lot more effective if we're aimed in the right direction. And that is really what I think human design is all about, is helping you find that sense of purpose, that flow that gets your heart singing so that you're able to really start just putting all the pieces together and creating that beautiful life that you deserve, that you were meant to live.
I love that. And I'm wondering too, because one of the most transformational aspects of human design is the decision-making authorities. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the different types of authorities and how they feel in real life. What's the difference with them, how they work?
Yeah, for sure. I think this one was one of the most interesting pieces for me because we talk a lot about making aligned decisions, knowing things in your gut, listening to your inner voice. I think, especially if you're into like personal development in the spirituality world, that is the never ending story. And I remember years ago, I was just like, where's the line between my mind and my intuition and my inner voice? There's a lot of noise up there sometimes, and we all do that work, meditation, things like that to calm the mind down. But like at the root of it, what is the exact way that I'll know personally for me when it's the voice to listen to, that it's that intuition. It's the thing that's really meant for me to hear and not my nerves or distractions. And what I found for human design is it's not the same for everyone. And it's really interesting to see how it shows up in different people once you start to familiarize yourself with this. There's 7 different ways that we make decisions. And I would say, as I go through some of these at a high level, you can have more than one, but this is going to be your primary. So it doesn't mean if you are an emotional decision maker that you can't have a gut intuition. Like, that's not the base of it. It's really knowing what your primary way is that you make decisions so that you can easily read things when you need to. Out of the 7, 95% of us fall under 3. 50% of the population is an emotional decision maker, which is what I am. So this is always exactly why I used to get really confused, is because being an emotional decision maker in human design means that you ride a wave. So you'll go up in a peak, you'll have a valley, you'll be up, you'll be down. And then when the wave is complete is when you hear your inner voice. So I would hear this, oh, well, follow your excitement. No, and I'm a very excited person. So I will tell you, I can come up with 70 different decisions during the wave that I am like, this is it for me. I should do it. But yeah, I'm going to cancel something. I'm going to quit my job. This is what it's meant for me. I'm going to start a new life. And I finally figured out, I'm like, oh my God, it is not like that for me. Like, I have to ride the waves. So now it doesn't have to take forever. It's usually a couple days for a big decision. You just wait till you're calmed down and then you chuckle when you think about all the things you thought you knew 3 days ago. And I always make a great decision once I'm settled down. And that's now my thing. I know the wave's going to come if I'm worked up about something. I just know that I have to let that current carry me for a minute until I can be at peace, and then I'll know. So that's the first one.
That makes a lot of
It's
sense.
next. Yeah. You can see an emotional decision maker. Like, you'll meet him and you're like, oh yeah, I get you a little wave. Then there is the sacral decision makers, which is about 35% of the population. So that's your other big chunk. And that's a gut response. So you hear a lot about that one because a lot of people do work that way. I think that emotional decision making is something that we probably recognize less, especially when you're talking about like more of the spiritual world and things like that. But the sacral, I think, is a really good example of how most of us talk is, oh, feeling it in your gut. A lot of people do. And a really neat way to like test that for yourself, if you're an emotional decision maker, you may have just listened and been like, oh yeah, that's me. Sacral, it's ask yourself questions that you already know the answer to, and you'll be able to feel that feeling. And a sacral response is really, it's a yes or no in your gut. It's really clear and it can be like an actual question. So like when you're trying to decide, you ask yourself like a specific question and you'll know in your gut what your answer is. If you've got to process it, get more information, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to come right exactly to it. But that one, it's a really clear cut gut feeling, literally in your body. Excitement drives that one a lot. So if you're excited about something, you're on the right path, get rolling. And then the final one is the splenic authority, which I think this one's really interesting because this is more about your inner voice. And that really is, it's an intuitive feeling. It can be like a little bit quieter and just pop up in the back of your head. It's the one that like you're just driving down the road, it says go north. And you're like, I don't know why I'm going north, but that's where I'm going to go. So that one, it really reminds me of what we talk about with inner voices and things like that. But that's 9% of the population. So most people don't have that. My husband does. And I think it's really funny because this one is known for being a kind of about like immediate health and survival. And I always laugh at him because we'll walk into a restaurant and he's like, I gotta go. And I've just learned by knowing his human design that we should just go. It's just not for him. And he really likes to be safe. Get all worked up, and I started to realize I'm like, it's like a visceral body response. If I do something that his body is like, we shouldn't do this, it's instant, it's intense, and it is like, boom, here it is.
I think that's interesting to note. And I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, just how you can use it to kind of more understanding of your part. And I'm wondering too, because I know a lot of my clients and just people listening, oftentimes because we're so successful, because at some point along a lot the shadow side of people pleasing or overthinking. And I'm wondering how kind of these knowing your authority, like which one is better for you when it comes to make decisions, how does that help cut out all the noise so you can feel more aligned with your decisions?
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, I think that is probably a lot of what led me into the human design work. It's like when you're a goal oriented person and you want to achieve a lot of great things and you're trying to get somewhere big and you feel like you just need to do all the things to make everybody happy along the way. You don't want to drop a ball. You're like, oh my gosh, this castle I'm building is just going to fall if I don't accomplish all these things. And for emotional authorities, which is a lot of us, it is really easy to get caught up in a feeling about how you want someone else to feel. One of my favorite coaching things is it is none of your business how somebody else feels about what you're doing, but that's easier said than done. We all care about people. So what are you doing right? But I think it really helps me where I would get worked up about an emotion that I had about what I should be doing somewhere. And I have realized now that's not the time to make a decision. I take longer to respond sometimes if I have an email that comes in that I'm like, oh, here, that really spiked my nerves. And I just want to act quickly. I have realized that is not me being in my best self. Like, that's not an aligned movement. That is coming from my mind. And there's a lot going on up there that I don't necessarily trust it to lead everything going on. If we listen to every thought we had, you do a lot of weird things. With my husband, with the splenic, I've just realized with him, it's like when he gets like a quick hit of something, that's the way he's hearing it. So if he's like, he doesn't change his mind. Like, I mean, me with the emotional authority, I'm like up and down. It's Thursday, I'm this way. Then on Friday, I'm totally different direction. Whereas with him, it's once he's gotten that specific hit. And again, if he's all caught up in the story, I know that it's not that intuitive response for him. But when he gives me a quick, I don't want to do that. I know he doesn't want to do that. And it's similar with the sacrals and the gut response of the sacral isn't excited about it.
Yeah.
They probably should do it.
I know you might not remember this, but do you remember what mine is? I might have
Here's some
forgotten it.
sacral. Heard you say 3 times. Yes. That's her excitement. And I love it because I'm like, this is so her. Honestly, if I followed all of my excitement, I'd own 37 pets. I'd probably have 10 houses. I'd be bankrupt. I
And that
love to
makes a
be
lot of sense.
excited,
But
but I
this is
have to watch it.
yeah, but that makes sense because I think that does help people understand each other on a deeper level. So I maybe want to transition a little bit of that, like how that really applies in relationships and communication, because we really have to understand our differences. And I'm curious how, like when you connect to your partner in this way, or if you understand each other's human design, how can that help you navigate conflict better?
This is like human design gold. And I feel like it's an overlooked part of it. And I actually will pull this for people I work with all the time. I'm like, do you want me to do your spouse? Do you want me to do your kid? Because once people start to see the magic in themselves, you're like, wow, this is really working for me. And then you start to appreciate that there's this person that you're like connected to that couldn't possibly have the same chart. Like they're not going to be exactly the same. So if you start to recognize that you have all of these unique qualities and strengths that you should really be leaning into, and maybe some areas where you're just not meant to be. It's what does that mean for your partner? Who are they? There's some things about in human design about like areas where you're more or less influenceable, things that you might be really defined in who you are around. So it's like probably not an area where you're going to want to change. And then there's going to be some areas where you're really fluid. And I found it to be really helpful to navigating challenges because you realize for me and my husband, it's don't ask me to make a decision while I'm all worked up because it's not going to work. And it drives him nuts because he's splenic. So I'm ready. Let's talk about it right now. I've completed the whole cycle and I am like, I can't. Please don't do this. We won't have a good conversation. Or if you're both emotional and you're riding this wave together and you're like, we need to know like when the other person is done. some people have a really open mind, some people don't. And you can figure out ways to communicate that are going to work for them in a place that you can meet where you know that they can understand things and that you also are appreciating some kind of boundaries of who they are,
Yeah.
loving
Is
them for all the great things that they have.
is that like the defined and undefined centers, or is that different? Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah. So the centers and the definitions are really interesting. So it's very aligned with chakras. There's a little bit of intricacies, but if you're familiar with chakras, it follows that flow. There's multiple centers all aligned with that kind of chakra based placements, and the functionality of them is very similar too. So when you're looking at your root chakra, there's a defined root or an undefined root in human design. So that just tells you if it's a defined center that you are going to be very defined in that way. So follows again all the different chakras. There's places you're open and places that you're not so open, where you drive your own energy and you have your own beliefs. I have a very open chart. So for me, you put me in a room, I crack myself up. I'm like the new me. I've got a Southern accent. I'm an adventurer. And then I'm a studious person that you can put me anywhere and I will just think that I'm that. But now shows the parts of my chart and it was like, oh, you go to Tony Robbins and you're the one that leaves being like so hyped up. And then you get home and you're like, I don't even know what that was about. That's me. My husband's, again, very defined. He's the same guy, like, all over the place. I use him as emotional home, and it's interesting because our charts lay in a really complementary fashion. There's no bad match in human design, but I always thought it was interesting because my energy feels really settled around him, which really stood out to me as something that made sense. I was like, because I have all these areas where I'm just like soaking in the energy of other people. And when I'm with someone that I'm very close to, where he holds his own is a balance to me. And then that comes into romance and all sorts of other things when you look at like your sacral center.
Yeah, I'm curious. Let's talk a little bit more about that. How does that come into play, like the sacral center?
Yes, the sacral center is a very fun one, in my opinion. I think it's beautiful on both sides. And that's the neat thing about human design. Again, like, when I tell you a little bit about the undefined and defined, I want to be super clear that there's not one thing that's better than the other. The defined sacral is different, though, than an undefined sacral center. So when you're defined, it just means that you create your own energy there. You're really just going to get energy when your desires peak. When you think about like sexual desire, artistic desire, creative desire in general is a space that you're going to be consistent and steady, and it's going to bring you energy. Sexuality wise, you're going to know what you like. It's not going to really change from partner to partner. It doesn't mean that it's not fun to explore new things and you might not find things that you like, but you're not going to be as influenced by that from an outside source. And like generally, it's just a steady energy. It's, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to go. This is what I like. Sign me up. Really just tapped in. Undefined sacral is just a little different. So, undefined sacral is an inconsistent energy. So, basically, like you drive energy from someone else's source. This can be really fun because it also allows a lot of flexibility. It reminds me of water in desire land, where, one day being with different people, you can be really into one thing, and then you can find another partner that like opens up a whole new world to you. And you may then leave that and then never think about it again. Find yourself down a whole different road. So it's just a really fluid version of that. And it can have ebbs and flows. I have an undefined sacral. For me, I just realized that was fine. When it's in the up wave, it's so much fun. And then if I just need a little rest, it's like totally okay. I think the key with undefined sacrals too is like remembering yourself. It can be harder with an undefined sacral center to not get caught up in your partner's desires, specifically if they have a defined sacral, because it will be very easy to go with the flow. And just making sure if you're doing that, that you like the flow that you're going with.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm wondering too, I'm curious how it works when there's like maybe two defined sacrals together or two undefined sacrals together. Like, how does that play out?
Yeah. So two defined sacrals, it can be a very exciting time, but it can also be a very unexciting time if these two sacrals don't like the same thing. So you're gonna have like steady energy. Like I think of the couples that are like, oh, we're all over each other all the time. Like it's consistent. We're doing it. Like we're having fun. Those are two divine sacrals that are on the same page. Like they've got the same drive, the same interest. They're having a blast. Also, on the adverse of that, if you have two sacrals that are not aligned on energy levels or not feeling each other, like that is a force of energy that you can feel. Like it feels like a big stop sign. Don't bad go. You're with the sacral that doesn't want to engage with you in that way. Like it is going to feel like a hard, energetic no.
I'm
So,
curious, like, is there ways to navigate that for people though? What would you recommend to them if that's the case?
yeah. Firstly, I think there's like seasons to relationships, right? So, like, sometimes you might be compatible. Like, everybody is compatible. It's more about finding the shared space. Like, how can we find things that both of us are excited about, find a way to interact that energetically feels authentic and good for us both, and like really talking about it. Like, you've got to get it out on the table because at the end of the day, just like bending for the other person isn't going to work. You've got to figure out where you can meet, what you can both like, how you can problem solve around that to come back together in a good meeting place, which is like so totally doable. It's really just, I think, getting on the same page and gaining an understanding of where you're not aligning and where you can.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cause I feel like if there's a willingness, there's always ways to work with your blueprint, so to speak, whatever that looks like, right?
I was actually going to use the same word, like having a willingness and openness to also like trying new things. Cause maybe the things that you're doing, you're stuck in like a set way of interacting. And at the end of the day, like it's not doing it for one or both of you. So even if you know what you like, it doesn't mean that you might not like a lot of different things that you haven't tried yet. Getting in the water and doing some
Yeah.
exploring together.
Yes. Which is can be very fun and enlightening
Like,
one way or the other. You can have fun with it
it
and
can
laugh at
be great.
yourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm wondering too, like on the flip side of that, with the two undefined, how does that show up?
Yeah. So too undefined is really, I think, honoring that ebb and flow. And the way that I think about that part is like when the wave comes through of the energy, like just really embrace that and don't expect the energy to be there for the other person, but try to bring the energy to the relationship. Like it shouldn't be a pressured thing of, hey, I'm in the mood and you're falling a little flat. It must be your undefined sacral center. I think fun and light, where it's not feeling like you need to do something or checking boxes or really having a lightness of spirit about it. And I think just keeping that open communication and positive energy in your partnership so that nobody gets stuck on feeling stuck. Cause I think that's what happens with the undefined sacrals is there's like this expectation that society puts on us that like a healthy love life looks like X. And you're like, well, we haven't slept together 4 times this week. Get rid of that story if not helpful. But putting an effort to, I think, a consistent, like just thoughtful and mindfulness into creating experiences that are exciting and fun and prioritizing it instead of letting it fall off and being like, oh, neither of us are really that worried about. That's not true. Like we all deserve to have a great sex life and like it's there and it's available to all of us. It's just some of us are gonna have that like natural instinct to drive it all the time and others are gonna have a little bit more of a ear-like quality to it.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people listening, a lot of women struggle with feeling disconnected from their own desire. It's a huge problem. Or, like you say, compare themselves to other people or even comparing themselves to their partner. And so I'm curious, like, what other ways can human design, do you think, help them reclaim their pleasure there and really honor their? Because I think this helps a lot about just honoring your unique rhythm, your unique needs. But is there anything else that you would have to say about that?
Yeah, I think it's a shared issue, right? Like the defined sacral, the undefined sacral, it really doesn't matter. As women, there is a lot that we're trying to hold up, I think, just in society today. There's kids, there's jobs, there's responsibilities. We want to stay in shape. We want to look good on social media. We want to keep up with all the stuff and the things. And then we want to go home and we want to feel valued by our husbands or partners, or maybe we're trying to get out and date. And that's, gosh, where are you going to fit that on your schedule? So there's just a lot, I think, that it's a distraction from honoring yourself and making sure that you're sexual needs are met, whether it be with someone or by yourself, because we don't need somebody to help us there either. So if this is something that's challenging, it's sometimes I think, regardless of the definition, it's like exploring what you personally like, because you might have a defined sacral center and you might be trying to still please your partner. And that might be literally driving you up the wall because you're just like hitting it where you're like, I don't really like this, but this is what he wants. So I'm just going to do it. And that's a sucky place to be. Like, I don't think that we should ever be doing that. And that's not fair. So if you feel like you're there, I think it's taking a step back to really analyze what you are enjoying and then come to your partner to find a middle ground that you can meet at. And then I think when it comes more to that undefined, it's like it's easy to get a little lost and maybe not know what you like. And knowing that it's okay to be non-specific and like just follow things that feel fun and exciting. And if they change, that's totally fine. And that there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with moving on to a new thing or leaving something behind and just taking the time to just follow joy a little bit and see what hits and just roll with it and make some time for yourself. Because none of it works without making some time for yourself.
Oh, I think that's so huge. I preach about making time for your sensual self care because it is such a great way we can nourish ourselves. And like you say, you got to figure out what you like, what you don't without the pressure of a partner or somebody else. Like it's really helpful. And so I
Yeah.
find that can be super valuable. I love that. I'm curious too, like any other ways you feel like it helps people to just jive better together? Like how does it help them connect more?
Yeah. I think as far as connecting more, it's a great tool for me as a wife and as a parent. My son's human design is a manifester, which manifestors are like what the world got built on because they're like a go get it personality. You don't tell them anything, quite frankly, is what I've learned. But I don't communicate with my son the way that society tells me to communicate with a 14-year-old boy. And you know what? He's doing great. And I feel awesome about it. I know that boy is going to move mountains one day. And me trying to make him fit a box would have only set him back. And then there's people like me and my husband, we're both projectors. So like our energy, if you're a projector, is lesser. Like we're meant to be like the overseers of things and identifiers of efficiency, teachers. We're not meant to go out and generate all the work. And I can't do an 8-hour workday. I tried to do that for a million years. So I'm like, 4 hours, I'm good. That's all I really got. And then I think a lot. And I've realized how much I get done while I think. And just understanding the dynamics in my family of like how people work so that I can be respectful of their energetic tendencies and thoughtful about that. Like when we think about how much stuff we do because we think we need to do things for people, I think what we could really do for people is to understand who they are and interact with them in a way that feels good rather than exhaust ourselves trying to go pick up their dry cleaning and cook all the meals and be at every event. Like, I'd rather help differently personally.
That makes more sense just with ease and efficiency. So
Hmm.
is even thinking about like how you show up to work or whatever it is that you're doing, if it's how this can help you just have more ease in whatever you're doing.
Oh, yeah. It is an amazing thing when you start just meeting people too. And I look at a lot of charts. So you see how much people, when they're flowing, follow their design. And when you see somebody that is so stuck and exhausted and burnout, and unfortunately, that's how I found this work was because I was right there. But by understanding it, it gave me permission to be tired. I looked at my chart and I was like, no wonder I can't get all this done. Like, I was never meant to be this in this world. I was never meant to work like this. And the way that human design really has shown me this too is like many years ago and like the industrial revolution and stuff, it was like the manifestors ran everything and it is a very go get it personality type. And then generators did all the work and generators can work really steadily. They're amazing people. They bring the energy, which is fabulous, but they also can get burnt out because gosh, they can just do it all. But when you think about this whole right at your desk all day way that we're living, unfortunately for the generator, honestly, they can keep up. So they're almost in the worst spot because they're not getting slammed in the same way and they just keep doing it and adding. And then projectors and reflectors were very open and we don't produce energy in the same ways. So I was like, gosh, I was going through the worst burnout. And I was like, no wonder. I'm just like an open door to people's energy coming in and out. And I'm just not meant to work like that. And I stopped doing it. And it was really hard to stop doing it because you're not supposed to stop doing that. And when I did, my health became so much like I was physically getting sick over this. And I made twice as much money, more than twice as much money. It was like the door to success was open for me, and I stepped on through. If I did everything everybody told me not to do, and it's a little different for each person, and it's like there's so much in the charts too that help you with like purpose and like understanding the work that you're here to do. So when you get ideas about maybe things in business that you might be wanting to explore or ways that you can contribute more in your personal life or social circles, the way you want to interact differently with people, it really gives you that home base of being like, gosh, I'm really drawn to do this. And it makes a lot of sense because I think that's part of what I'm here to do. So when you think about alignment and what that real true calling is in you and what's your mind, like that's been a really helpful home base for me is like looking at the blueprint of who I am.
I think it felt so fun because you actually did a reading for me recently, and it was so great because I mean, I've dabbled a little bit in human design, but I don't know a lot about it. But it felt really good to feel like, oh, I'm really in alignment with what I'm meant to be doing in the world. I was so relieved in a way, like, oh, this is normal. And the way I like to work is normal. And it was so cool. I think it's just such a gift to have these deeper understandings of yourself. And with anything, you can take what you resonate with and leave what doesn't, but it can be a tool to just be aware, to increase your awareness of what's best for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like, it's a take it or leave it thing. All of it is. And I continue to be shocked by who finds their charts interesting. There's a lot of people that are scientists that are into this. And I think it's because there's so many complexities to it. And it just seems to resonate, and I think there's always things that you might see that you're like, "That doesn't really sound like me." It's like just something to sit on and think about for a while. Maybe it will one day, and maybe it won't, and that's probably just because you just don't need it, because there's something else calling you that is gonna mean more.
But I loved it. I thought it was so interesting and it makes a lot of sense. I want to be curious. I love how you use it as a tool for parenting too, because I think everything that we can learn to try to help us be more compatible with the people around us is so helpful. If it's your partner or if it's your kid, and also looking at the dynamics of everyone working together, maybe we can figure out like whose strengths are where so that we don't beat our heads on each other or on tasks that we know, "Oh, you're great at doing that. That should be your zone of genius. And let me do what I'm great at." Then we all get along better and have more energy and ease and joy.
That's exactly it, because it even gets into, like, when you get deeper into the charts, like, there's how you process information. I process information in low sound. I think it's wild because I have always been a person that I can't think and have a TV on. Doesn't mean that I don't love to listen to music or whatever, but I can't have both things coming at me at the same time. And my husband is in indirect lighting, so it's hysterical. He goes around our house and patrols the, like, temperature of all the lights, and he is always flipping lights on and off everywhere.
That must be my husband too, because he cannot stand the lights on. And I can't, I
Yeah,
like the lights on because I can't see and he likes them off. It's so funny. These are interesting little things though that are good to know. So you can have grace for someone and be like, oh, it makes sense. Versus like,
yeah,
let's fight about the lights.
yeah, yeah. And in the digestion, it's about how you eat too. So like I'm low salad and so is my son. And honestly, we've never really been big on family dinner. And I felt bad about it for a really long time because they're like, you shouldn't be having family dinner. I'm like, I don't know. And I realized doing both for charts, I'm like, you know what? We want to eat in peace. And we both like it.
Oh my gosh, I
And
love
my
it.
husband wants to turn on the right lights while we do it.
That's so great. Oh, I love it. I could just keep talking to you forever, but I would love also if you could let people know if they're curious to learn more or want to connect with you and deepen their understanding of human design, like where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, always happy to let people know a little bit of information about what their charts are. You can even just send me an email and I will tell you what your stuff is. I think this is great work. I want it out in the world. My website is www.wealthysaleswoman.com. You can follow me on Facebook as well. That's also Wealthy Saleswoman. Really, what I'm out here to do is just help all these wonderful women that are working so hard create the wealth that they deserve in their lives. And I mean that in the sense, of course, that money that we're all wanting, but really creating a life that you enjoy, that's filled with all the great things that we deserve, and that you're not just working yourselves to the bone, trying to get from one day to the next and not even enjoying all the stuff that you're succeeding in creating. Because I just feel like as a society, I feel like we're ready to turn that corner. And it's just about people doing the work to try and spread the ways that they've figured it out. And I'm just excited to do that. So always looking forward to sharing the wealth in my head with anyone that will listen because I want to help these ladies win.
Yes, are so amazing. Thank you so much, Ellie. And I'll make sure as well to put in the show notes where you can find her and connect with her and work more closely with her if you want to dive deeply into human design, because it really is fascinating. I loved my reading with you. And I'm wondering too, maybe is there any last question that you wished I would have asked or any last words you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
I think that my real thing is we have all been conditioned to think that there is one way to get to success and that it takes so much effort. And I hear people all the time, you got to work hard to play hard. You got to do all this to be able to succeed. And I swear to you, that is not the truth. And there really is a way to be extremely successful, enjoy your life. You said all these things that I'm up to. Yeah, I'm going to run 100 miles this year. And I am not going to kill myself doing it. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to run around in the woods. I'm going to take my time. I did all these great hobbies and all this stuff. I'm a mom. I'm super present. I'm a good wife. I run my business. There is a way to do it all without draining the tank while you do it.
Yes to that.
Amen. It's the point.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you all so much for listening. Please make sure to share this episode with a friend who you know would love it. And thank you so much. We will look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for listening to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. If you loved this episode, please go ahead and forward it right now to someone you know would love it. And if you've not had a chance yet to leave us a rave review on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to rate and review if you enjoyed it, as well as make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to stay connected, make sure to go to amandatesta.com/thegoods to download your free sensuality activation and stay connected. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.